Okay, so LA wildfires. We're going deep today. I mean, you see the headlines, right? The pictures, the destruction.
Uh-huh.
We're 25,000 acres, homes, businesses, everything just gone.
It's devastating.
Totally. But today, we're going beyond that initial impact. We're looking at what happens after, when the news crews leave and it's not on the front page anymore. What's that recovery process like? And we're doing it all through the lens of a restoration professional.
Yeah, and one thing that's really important to understand is that the danger isn't over when the flames are out. There's this whole other set of threats.
Right. Like it's not just smoldering embers we're talking about.
Yeah.
Our research mentions things like toxic smoke, asbestos getting kicked up, melted plastics, all kinds of stuff releasing nasty things into the air.
Exactly. And these fires, because they're happening in an urban setting, that actually creates a unique problem.
Oh, so
Well, think about it. You've got a much denser mix of materials compared to like a forest fire. It's homes, it's cars, industrial sites, all burning super hot. It's this crazy cocktail of chemicals.
And it's the restoration teams, right? They're the first ones walking into that.
Right into the thick of it.
It's kind of scary seeing the specific substances they list in the research. Benzene, hexavalent chromium, PAH is like, whoa.
And you don't always know what you're dealing with at first.
One of the sources had this case study about a crew working on a house. Looked fine from the outside, but they started demolition, and boom, asbestos insulation. Disturbed by the heat. Without the right protection, they're inhaling those fibers.
That's the thing. You can't always see the danger.
And it's not just the workers at risk, right? It's people returning home, too.
Absolutely. Those chemicals can stick around in the air, in the soil, and long-term exposure, it's linked to all kinds of health issues, respiratory problems, even cancer.
So you can't just assume it's safe to go back in, even when the smoke clears. I'm curious, when these teams go into a burned building, what are some of the things they're looking out for that maybe the average person wouldn't even think about?
Well, you have to remember that fire affects different materials in different ways. Take concrete, for example. Seems indestructible, but extreme heat can weaken it, make it crack. It's called spalling.
So it might look solid, but
Or
actually...
crumble under pressure.
Wow.
And wood, obviously, it shars, loses its strength. Even steel, as strong as it is, can warp and buckle at high temperatures.
I guess you think of these big structures, but is it those smaller connection points that are most vulnerable?
You got it. The joints holding everything together.
Like a house of cards, right? You
Yeah.
knock out one piece, the whole thing cracks.
Exactly. Come crashing down. And that's why you have to do a really thorough structural assessment before anyone even steps foot inside.
These restoration pros, they know what to look for.
They're trained to spot those red flags.
This also brings up the point that the fire's impact, it's not just contained to that immediate burn zone, right?
Right. It's a ripple effect.
Like throwing a pebble in a pond.
Perfect analogy.
It spreads out.
And we see that with smoke and soot. Tiny particles traveling through ventilation systems, getting into other buildings through shared walls, even settling miles away.
So it's not just like, oh, there's some dirt on things.
No. Soot's got acidic residue that can keep causing damage.
Even after the fire's out.
It can corrode metal, damage paint, weaken building materials over time.
So your house wasn't even hit by the fire. You could still end up with damage, health risks, all because of that smoke and soot.
That's why air quality testing is so important, even for places that weren't directly in the fire's path.
And then there's the irony, right? The water used to fight the fire, actually.
Creates a whole other set of problems, it's true.
Water damage.
Just as bad as fire damage in some cases. Standing water, mold starts growing, materials need special drying so they don't warp. Electrical systems, huge hazard when you mix water and electricity.
Not to mention rust.
Corrosion on all those metal components.
It's crazy, like a chain reaction of damage.
It is.
So if you were a restoration worker heading into this environment, what would you absolutely have to have with you?
No question, safety gear. And I mean, the right gear. NIRS certified respirator, at least an N95 mask, maybe even stronger depending on what's present. Full protective clothing, gloves, eye protection, boots, the whole 9 yards.
But it's not just about having it.
You got to know how to use it. Decontamination procedures, regular health checks, all of that's essential.
This isn't just cleaning up, it's serious stuff.
You're dealing with hazardous materials.
Potentially unstable structures.
Exactly. One of our sources, a restoration worker, was talking about this close call he had. Inspecting an attic, didn't realize part of the roof had been weakened, stepped on the wrong spot.
Oh, no.
The whole thing caved in. Luckily, he had a hard hat on, minor injuries, but it could have been way worse.
So easy to forget how dangerous this is.
Even for the pros.
So this isn't just restoring buildings, it's about
Protecting lives.
workers and the people who live there. Okay, let's switch gears for a second and think about our listeners.
Okay.
Let's say your home was affected by a fire like this. What kind of insurance coverage are we talking about?
Well, the good news is most standard homeowners and renters insurance policies cover the basics.
Basics meaning.
Direct fire damage, smoke, soot, water damage from putting the fire out, even temporary housing if you can't live there.
Okay, but are there any gotchas people should watch out for?
There are. I was reading this case where a homeowner got denied coverage for smoke damage.
What happened?
They tried to air out the house after the fire, which makes sense, right? But they opened windows, and that actually sucked in more smoke and soot from outside.
Oh, no.
Insurance companies said they hadn't done enough to prevent further damage, denied the claim.
So sometimes trying to do the right thing,
Can backfire.
big time.
It's really important to talk to your insurance company, to the restoration professionals before you do anything.
Don't just wing it.
Right. Document everything, take pictures, keep track of all your expenses.
So we've covered those immediate dangers, those hidden threats, safety, insurance. But what about the actual restoration process? What's involved in bringing a property back to life after a fire?
It's not just about cleaning up ash.
Right. It's a whole process.
It starts with a really thorough assessment of the damage. We need to understand how structurally sound the building is, check for hazardous materials like asbestos and lead paint.
Sounds pretty involved.
We have to map out the moisture levels, too. See how bad the water damage is. And, of course, inspect the HVAC system for contamination.
So it's like a
checkup for the building.
make sure we understand the full picture before doing anything.
Exactly. And then we move into containment and stabilization.
Which is?
Securing the property, things like boarding up windows, putting on a temporary roof if needed, extracting water to prevent further damage.
Like setting up a triage zone
That's a good way to put it.
before the real work can begin.
Once things are stabilized, then we can move on to the cleaning and decontamination process.
And that's where things get really high tech, right?
Yeah, we're talking HEPA filtration, dry ice blasting, all kinds of specialized techniques.
Break it down for us. What are those?
Well, HEPA filtration, think of it like a giant vacuum with a super fine filter.
Sucking up all those tiny particles.
Exactly. And dry ice blasting, that uses frozen carbon dioxide pellets to clean surfaces without damaging them. The pellets hit the surface, turn straight from a solid to a gas, lift the dirt away.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It's great for delicate materials. Then there's chemical sponge cleaning, where you apply a special sponge that absorbs all the soot and contaminants.
So you're not just scrubbing and wiping things down.
No, it's a lot more scientific than that. And then to get rid of that lingering smoke smell, we use hydroxyl deodorization. It uses this process called advanced oxidation to neutralize those odor-causing molecules in the air. They have machines that generate hydroxyl radicals.
Hydroxyl radicals, that sounds intense.
They're like tiny but powerful cleaning agents that break down those smelly molecules.
It's crazy how much science goes into all of this.
It's a highly specialized field. You have to understand both the physical and chemical aspects of fire damage. And even after all that, there's still more to consider. Long-term concerns.
Right, like even when all the immediate stuff is taken care of.
Exactly.
We'll dive into those long-term impacts, the environmental effects, everything else in the next part of our deep dive. This is like this chain reaction, right? The damage keeps going, even years later. When we talk about long-term environmental impacts, what are we thinking about?
Well, there's the air quality, of course. Wildfire smoke, all that particulate matter travels for miles, impacts people way beyond just the immediate area. Respiratory problems, especially for the elderly kids.
Yeah.
But then you've got the soil, the water contamination.
That's something I hadn't really considered. How does a fire actually contaminate the soil and water?
Think about all those materials we talked about burning. Homes, cars, industrial waste. It all releases chemicals. Some soak into the ground, could contaminate groundwater. Others get washed away by rain, runoff, polluting rivers, streams. There was a study after the Camp Fire in California 2018 found high levels of heavy metals in the water months after the fire was out.
So you've got the debris you can see, but then this invisible threat that lingers.
Exactly. And that requires a whole different set of expertise. Environmental scientists to figure out how bad the contamination is, create a plan to clean it up, monitor everything over time, make sure it's actually working.
And all of this impacts the ecosystem too, right? The plants, the animals.
Huge impact. Habitats destroyed, wildlife displaced, throws the whole ecosystem out of whack. Can take years, decades even, for an area to fully recover after a big wildfire. One of the sources we looked at talks about the role of controlled burns in forest management. Intentionally set small controlled fires to clear out underbrush reduces the risk of these massive out-of-control wildfires.
I've heard about that. Seems counterintuitive, setting fires to prevent fires.
Right. But there's actually a lot of science behind it. You're basically reducing the fuel load. Less stuff to burn means if a fire does start, it's not as intense, easier to control. And a lot of these controlled burns, they mimic the natural fire cycles that have always been happening in forests. Some plants even need fire to survive.
It's like we messed things up by trying to suppress all fires, and now we're realizing a little bit of fire can actually be good.
Finding that balance is key. Okay, let's circle back to something we touched on earlier, the long-term health risks for people exposed to wildfire smoke and debris, not just in the moment, but years down the line.
Right, we talked about the immediate dangers of inhaling all that smoke, but our sources also talk about the potential for long-term health problems, not just for the cleanup crews, but for anyone who was exposed.
Exactly. And we're still learning about all the potential impacts, but studies have shown a link between wildfire smoke and respiratory illnesses, asthma, bronchitis, even lung cancer. Those fine particles in the smoke, they get deep in your lungs, causing damage over time. And it's not just people right near the fire. That smoke travels.
So it's not just if you have a pre-existing condition, like anyone could be at risk.
Right. Even healthy people can have long-term problems after being exposed to that smoke. And then there are the chemicals released during a fire. We talked asbestos, but there's also benzene, formaldehyde, all kinds of volatile organic compounds. A lot of them are carcinogenic.
It's like this invisible enemy.
You can't see it, but it can have serious consequences down the road. That's why taking precautions even after the fire is out is so important. Wear a mask when you're cleaning up, wash your hands a lot, and know the signs and symptoms of smoke inhalation and chemical exposure.
Okay, so what are some symptoms people should be watching out for?
With smoke inhalation, it's usually coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, chest tightness, sore throat, anything like that. Especially if it sticks around or gets worse, see a doctor right away.
And what about for chemical exposure? Are there any red flags?
That one's trickier. Depends on the specific chemicals and how much you were exposed to. But in general, headaches, dizziness, nausea, skin irritation, eye irritation, anything like that could be a sign.
It sounds like you really have to be proactive about your health after something like this. Don't wait until you're feeling super sick.
Exactly. Early intervention is key. And it's not just physical health either. Wildfires can be incredibly traumatic experiences. Loss of your home, disruption to your life, all the fear and uncertainty, it takes a toll on your mental health.
It's easy to focus on the physical stuff, the damage to buildings and things, but the emotional impact is huge.
Absolutely. And it's okay to not be okay after something like this. It's normal to feel sad, to grieve, to be angry, anxious. Don't bottle it up. Don't pretend everything's fine. Talk to someone.
Reach out to friends, family. There are also resources like the Red Cross, FEMA. A lot of local groups offer counseling support groups. It's okay to ask for help.
And there are things you can do on your own too. Spend time in nature, try some relaxation techniques, deep breathing, meditation, things like that. Just connecting with loved ones can be really helpful.
And be patient with yourself. Trauma takes time to process, to heal from. There will be good days and bad days. Don't put pressure on yourself to just get over it.
It's a process. We've talked a lot about wildfires as these individual events, but, we have to remember they're part of a larger trend.
Climate change. It's a big factor here.
Exactly. Hotter, drier conditions, that's basically wildfire fuel. They ignite easier, they spread faster. We're seeing these events become more frequent, more intense, and they're encroaching on urban areas more and more.
So it's not just about putting out this fire. It's about thinking long-term, addressing those root causes.
And that involves a lot of different approaches. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions to slow down climate change, investing in better forest management, including those controlled burns we talked about, updating building codes to make structures more fire-resistant, educating communities about the risks and how to be prepared. There's a lot we can do.
It feels like there's a lot of work to be done. But our sources also highlight all this incredible innovation happening. New technologies being developed to prevent fires, fight them more effectively, like those AI systems that can spot fires when they're still tiny.
Right, and drones dropping fire retardant, they can get to places that are really hard to access on foot.
It's pretty amazing to see how technology can be used.
Definitely. But technology is not the only answer. We also need to understand the science behind all of this, how fires behave, how they interact with the environment.
That's where that field of fire ecology comes in.
Exactly. It's a growing field. Helps us understand how fire fits into these natural ecosystems, and then how to restore those landscapes in a way that makes sense. Makes them more fire resilient, too.
It's like working with fire instead of always trying to fight it.
Right. And one of the things I found really interesting in our research was this idea that even the language we use can affect how we think about wildfires.
What do you mean?
Well, we always talk about fighting fire, the war on wildfires.
Right, that's how we usually describe it.
But some experts argue that kind of language creates this adversarial relationship. Maybe if we thought about it differently, we could find better solutions, more sustainable, more in line with how fire naturally works.
That's an interesting perspective. It's like sometimes the first step is changing how we think about the problem. We've been focused on LA, but wildfires are obviously a problem everywhere.
Global problem. Climate change is impacting fire seasons all over the world. They're more intense, they're lasting longer. It's something we all have to deal with.
One of the things I found really encouraging in our research was how much international cooperation is happening. Scientists sharing data, firefighters from different countries helping each other out, sending aid to communities affected by fires.
It's really inspiring to see. It shows that even with this huge global challenge, we can come together and learn from each other. We're not alone in this.
It really highlights how interconnected we all are.
What happens in one part of the world affects everyone.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we want to turn it back to you, the listener.
What role do you see yourself playing in this?
What can you do in your own life, in your community, to help build a more fire-resilient world?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem, but even small actions matter.
Absolutely. Educate yourself about wildfire risks in your area. Talk to your neighbors. Support local organizations working on this issue. Every little bit helps.
We can create a future where fires are managed more responsibly, communities are more prepared, and our natural landscapes are protected.
It's not just about putting out fires. It's about building a better future for everyone. Join us for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore what that future might look like. It feels like we're at this point where we get it. We see how big this wildfire problem is, the immediate stuff and the long-term consequences. But at the same time, there's all this cool new stuff being developed, this push for making communities more fire resilient. It feels hopeful.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a really complex issue, but I'm optimistic we can figure this out. It starts with each of us taking responsibility, not waiting for someone else to do it. We can all make a difference.
Our sources really emphasize those practical things people can do, like creating that defensible space around your house.
Right.
Choosing fire-resistant plants for your landscaping, that one stuck with me. It just makes sense.
It's such a simple thing, but it can really make a difference. Those plants are less likely to catch fire, and if they do, they don't spread the flames as easily.
Yeah.
It's not just about what you plant, though. It's how you maintain your yard, too.
Yeah.
Keeping your grass trimmed, clearing out dead branches, all of that helps.
It's about being aware of those little things that could be fire hazards.
Yeah, and it goes beyond our own backyards. It's about community, getting involved in cleanups, fire safety training, supporting your local fire department, that kind of stuff. When we work together, we can make a big difference.
That collective action piece comes up again and again.
Yeah.
And our sources talked about the importance of supporting research and innovation, too.
We've got to keep pushing forward, developing new technologies, better strategies for preventing fires, fighting them, and restoring those ecosystems after a fire has come through.
I was reading about these fire-resistant building materials, like roofing and siding that can handle extreme heat. It's wild.
In those early detection systems, using AI and satellites to spot fires when they're still small. I mean, imagine if we could catch every fire before it gets out of control.
It'd be amazing, like a smoke alarm for the whole forest.
Exactly. And we're even using drones now to replant trees after a fire. They can cover so much ground, way more efficient than doing it by hand.
Technology is playing a huge role.
It is, but it's not the only answer. We still need to understand the science of wildfires, how they work, how they interact with the environment.
That's where fire ecology comes in, right?
Yeah, that's a field that's really taking off. It's helping us see how fire is actually a natural part of so many ecosystems, and then using that knowledge to figure out the best ways to restore those landscapes, ways that make them more resilient to fire in the future.
We have to learn to live with fire, not just fight it all the time.
Right. And one of the sources we looked at, they had this really interesting point about the language we use when we talk about wildfires. They said, fighting fire, war on wildfires, all that, maybe it actually makes things harder.
How so?
Well, if we're always thinking about battling fire, maybe we miss opportunities to find those more sustainable solutions, the ones that work with nature instead of against it.
It's like sometimes the first step is changing our mindset. We've been focused on LA, but obviously this isn't just an LA problem.
No, not at all. This is happening all over the world. Climate change is making fire seasons more intense, they're lasting longer, it's a global issue.
One of the things that really stood out to me in our research was the level of international cooperation that's going on.
Oh, yeah, it's really amazing.
Scientists and firefighters from all over the world sharing information, developing new technologies, helping each other out. It feels like we're all in this together.
We are. We can learn from each other, support each other, and together find ways to make things better.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this question. What role do you see yourself playing in all of this?
What can you do in your own life to help build a more fire-resilient world?
It might feel like a huge problem, but don't get overwhelmed. Even small actions matter. Start by learning about the risks in your own area. Talk to your neighbors. Get involved. Support those organizations that are making a difference.
Every step we take brings us closer to a future where we're managing fire responsibly, protecting our communities and our planet.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you learned something new, that it got you thinking, and most importantly, that it inspires you to take action.